learned about the budget constraint, we now have to decide what goods we buy based on what we can afford. We're going to start with the simple case. I'm just going to decide how much rice I want to buy. I'm going to have to change this so that I can decide between rice and transportation, where I'm working with two goods. But let's start with one good. And to do that, we're going to use the concept of utility. So remember, utility is this strange concept with philosophical implications. And we want to try and decide what we think about whether utility is a good way to imagine stuff. But for now, let's just assume utility is a measure of your desire, what you want. How much rice do you want? Right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, look, we're going to use the same units for how you desire rice, utilities, and how you desire other things like transport. And we're going to use units that we're going to call dollars. So I'm basically going to say the measure of whether you like something is whether you're willing to pay for it. You don't like it, you won't buy it, right? So this is a very interesting concept. We're going to use the idea of what is often called cardinal utility for now. When you go further into intermediate micro, you can move from cardinal utility to ordinal utility, lexicographic preferences, all kinds of other things. But for now, and cardinal just means that we're measuring it. We're going to treat it as if we can add and subtract it, and And I'm going to just say it's what it's worth to you, right? And I'm going to engage in a measure which is two rules. The first is more is better, as I mentioned. So you would rather have 500 rice than 200 rice, right? Second, that while more is better, each additional unit is not as good as the previous one, right? So let's take a look at this. Let's say that if you got 200 rice, you would be like, I would be willing to spend 200 on it, right? Now, obviously, you would have to spend 400 on it. You're not going to buy that, right? You would say 250 rice instead of 250, 270. And so on. So you keep doing this, and basically what you're figuring out is unit by unit. For each extra unit of rice, how much do you want to spend? Now in this example, you are not going to buy 200 rice because you don't want to spend 400. But supposing the 200 rice was worth 600 to you, you would buy it because you only have to spend 400. It's worth 600 to you. So what you're doing is you're comparing unit by unit. How much is this worth versus how much am I spending? And so the underlying law, so 600, this could be 800, and so on, right? The underlying law is that dollar for dollar, in this case, every $2. You're looking at it and you're saying, do I want to spend $2 of this rice? And as long as my marginal utility, the extra utility I got, 600 to 800, is bigger than the cost I pay. So in this case, 600 to 800, my marginal utility was 200. But when I went from 200 to 250, I only paid $100. Right? So what you're doing is you're looking at this and saying, okay, it's worth 200 more to me, better than, more than the 100 I have to pay. And so you're going to keep on doing this. And where you will end is where your marginal utility is equal to the price. If the extra money you spend, which is the price, to buy a good is worth more to you than what that extra good is worth, you won't buy it. But if the extra money you spend is less compared to what you would feel when you bought the good, you will buy it. So the basic idea is you're making decisions on the margin. You're comparing dollar for dollar, dollar for dollar. Should I spend 100 extra? Well, yes, if my marginal utility is 200, I should. But if my marginal utility was less than 100, I would not. Right? So our first rule is going to be that you will keep purchasing rice up to the point where the marginal utility of the good is greater than or equal to the price of the good. That is, if you get better utility, you will buy it, right? Greater than or equal to the price of the good, you will keep buying it until, either you don't want to buy more of the good because the price exceeds the marginal utility, or you hit your income limits, right? So that's rule one. But we know we're going to choose between two goods. So let's look at rule two. So to remind you, we use this idea of marginal utility to say that for every extra unit of rice, is it worth the $2? As long as the marginal utility was higher than the price, right? You would buy it. But if it wasn't worth that much to you, you would not buy it. Right? Now we're going to remember that we are actually choosing between two goods, rice and transport. So what's going to happen is you're going to take each dollar and you're going to look at it and say, do I want to put it into rice? Do I want to buy gas for my car? Do I want to buy food? Do I want to pay for my bus pass? Do I want to pay my rent? Do I want to sort of fix my car, right? So what you want to think about is the ordinary everyday decisions you make, where you've got a budget, you got a fixed income is given, you've got prices, these things cost money, you can't adjust the prices, and you're looking at your income and you're making a decision. Where do I put my money? And the rule is dollar for dollar, dollar for dollar. You look at this dollar and say, is rice worth more? Is transport worth more? And every time rice is worth more, you will buy rice. Every time transport is worth more, you will buy transport. So what you'll end up doing, marginal utility of rice divided by the price of rice is basically the per dollar value. And similarly, marginal utility of transport divided by the price of transport is the per dollar value. So you're going to look at each dollar. You want to put it here? If this is bigger than that, you will put it here. You want to put it there? If that is bigger than this, you will put it there. Eventually, you will settle at a location where the marginal utility of good X divided by price of good X is about equal to the marginal utility of good Y over price of good Y. Because if this is bigger, you will shift your purchase to rice. If that is bigger, you will shift your purchase to transport. And you will allocate your income based on this rule. Now, this is a very interesting rule before we go any further. You've heard us talk about efficiency. This is what we mean. We just mean people allocate their income based on what they want to buy. So remember, what you want to buy is desire. It's not what's good for society. It's not necessarily our long-term plans. It's not any of that. It's a very particular and narrow idea that we will produce based on what you want, and you will tell us what you want using this rule to decide on demand. So before we go any further, can you see that when prices change, your budget constraint changes? And so if the price of X goes down, MUX over PX will become bigger. So you'll buy more of this until this equalizes. When the price of a good goes down, you buy more of this. If the price of Y goes up, you will buy more of Y until this equalizes. When the price of substitutes goes down, you will buy the substitute, you will buy less of this good. If you have higher income, you will keep doing this till you buy more goods because your budget constraint is out. So all that we did in the law of demand, you can see it here. So just remember, behind the law of demand is a whole set of assumptions about the price-taking consumer, who is a small individual in the markets, and who is the rational consumer, who is maximizing their own individual utility, subject to their own budget constraint.